My stepdaughter is on her third wedding. That's right, not one, not two, her third. And guess who's paid for every single one of them? Me. Guys, you won't believe this. She doesn't even care about the guys. She simply gets together with them, marries them, and tries to take all their money. Well, I guess the joke's on me because my wife is saying I have to go ahead and get a loan against my mortgage to pay for this third wedding, and you know what? I put my foot down. I'm not doing it. I don't really hate my stepdaughter, but my strong dislike for her is solely because of her bad attitude and ignorant behavior. She'd been a nuisance to me since the very first day that I've met her. She would not waste a chance to cause us trouble, but her mother's leniency only made her act like a brat even more. She spoiled her a bit too much, and which I often exposed, and this led us to having an argument in the end. It won't be an exaggeration to say that she was the bone of contention between us. She was the reason for most of our fights, and my wife and I met at my shop, which she stumbled upon accidentally. It was not like any dramatic encounter, but rather a pretty normal one. That's what I thought. But she then starts coming by my shop often, and that's just how we clicked. I wasn't sure if I was ready for a relationship back then, but she stayed patient, and just slowly we developed a connection I could not deny anymore. Initially, I had no idea that she was a divorced woman, but slowly she revealed that to me, and I was not apprehensive about it and just shrugged it off. Just a few days later, we met at a cafe, and there she introduced her daughter to me. I was shocked, but my love for the woman made me accept her too, and I accepted all the baggage she came with. Julia was very understanding and supportive of me in the early years of our marriage, and she took care of my house and me, so in return I let her daughter stay in our house, just as she wanted. Spencer was always quite a bratty kid, but I didn't mind it much in the beginning, considering her an immature child, but then things worsened just as she entered her teenage years. She was careless and a total mess. She reminded me of the mistakes I've made while I was a teenager, except that my family was dysfunctional and my parents were absolute drug addicts, with a large sum of debt weighing them down. She would go around picking fights right and left, making trouble at school, ignore her studies, lazying around the house, and just always be busy on her phone. I tried not to let it bother me, but it did. Just when I was on my verge of exploding, she started to bring guys home. This led me to chastising Julia, who only defended her, turning a blind eye to her worrisome acts. My wife's support only spoiled her even more. She would go around spending money absolutely recklessly. My hard-earned money was wasted like it was nothing. I was at my shop once when I received a message that a big chunk of money was withdrawn from my account. I still remember how things escalated that day. So, I went straight home where Julia and Spencer were sitting on a couch, surrounded by lots of shopping bags. I absolutely lost my temper and yelled at them, which resulted in Julia coming in front of her for defense, and after that fight, both boycotted me for weeks until I had to take a few steps back and dissolve the matter. And maybe that was one of my biggest mistakes, because after that, the daughter-mother duo never really took me seriously. They would just both side with each other, and I had to be the one to give up. Just when I thought my life could not get any worse, that brat proved me wrong. Spencer came home after meeting a guy she met a few weeks ago, and she suddenly gathered our attention and gave us a big heart attack by announcing that she was going to marry him. This time, Julia's also tried to persuade her, but the girl only did what she wanted and married him in a court. I was relieved somehow that I finally got rid of her, but I was again proven wrong when just in 2 months she came back home with her big suitcase, letting us know that she was an independent divorced woman now. I was speechless by how Julia supported her rather than reprimanding her for her immature actions. That's when I realized that I was not as important to her as a person as her daughter was. Julia's attitude changed drastically throughout the years, and she no longer showed me any kind of positive energy, but rather only demanded things from me just like her daughter. But I had spent years with the woman, so I still was not able to believe it. After the incident, things were quiet for some time, and I occupied my mind with my shop. But luck was definitely not on my side, and one day I was out of town to buy some stock for my shop when I get a call from my friend, informing me that a fire has broken out inside my shop, and I hurriedly drove back, and before I even realized I reached my shop, I was heartbroken to see it in ruins. That day, I lost my only means of earning, and I was so stressed that I locked myself in my room for days. None of my family members approached me or tried to console me at all. My health was falling, and I lost my appetite. Just then, my stepdaughter dropped another bomb. She brought home a man she introduced as her fiancé. I was stupefied by her actions, but again, my wife supported her. The man would visit our house regularly, and they would discuss the wedding venue, dresses, guests, and whatnot. I could only watch them with tired eyes. Julia then came to me and asked me to financially support her wedding. I had no money to do so, and I obviously declined. But this resulted in her crying her eyes out and wailing about her pathetic life. In the end, I had to agree. And that's how I took out a mortgage on my house for the very first time. I did not want to, but I had no other means to provide such a big amount of money for her wedding. Her wedding occurred successfully, and I tried to think of ways to recover my shop again, but it seemed impossible. Julia had no headache whatsoever. She didn't care about what happened to me as long as she had money. That's when I heard about her ex-husband from a man who coincidentally happened to know them. He told me how Julia made the life of his ex-husband an absolute loving hell and smooched off money from him until he had no more and left him. So, I decided to talk to her about my issues because I could see the same happening to me too. But Julia shut me off whenever I tried to talk about my financial problems and told me it was my responsibility, not hers. We avoided each other after that for some time until her daughter caused another drama. It was a Sunday morning when hell broke loose at our house. Spencer came back crying big fat tears and throwing profanities at her husband as she refused to go with him. She informed her about her decision to take a divorce, and I was appalled. Apparently, her husband had berated her for her lazy lifestyle, and she made a whole scene and packed her things and came to us. I found the whole situation silly and advised her to go back big. She was adamant to end her marriage and not have a relationship with that man at all. Her mother, again, was mum about the whole situation and let her do whatever she wanted, but I've had enough. I spent so much money on her wedding, and now she was bored of it too. I let both of them know that I wasn't going to just let the girl stay in my house if she divorced the man. Just as the words left my mouth, Julia got so furious and started yelling at me, so she grasped me by my shirt collar, and I was dumbfounded by her sudden attack and tried to free myself. This resulted in her losing her balance as she fell to the ground, and she started to curse and cry out even louder, and I was shocked to witness the woman going feral. I was still not moving from my spot when suddenly Spencer got up and ran towards the kitchen. I had no idea what the girl was doing, but she came back with a knife in her hands, and my eyes widened. I saw her crying madly as she started to threaten to, hurt herself if I tried to go against her. I had no idea what to do. The girl looked absolutely insane, and my wife was busy sobbing, so I took a deep breath. I did not know what the girl would do if I did not agree with her, so I just slowly nodded my head and agreed to whatever she wanted to do. And that's how that psycho girl got her second discount and came back to us. And I had thought that she might have changed a bit after her marriage, but no. She went back to her old ways and started to live her life recklessly again. She would demand money and go out with friends and party every day, and I kept myself in my room and started to avoid going downstairs. Bill kept piling up, and my savings were dwindling. There wasn't much money left in my account. The mortgage I took, I had no idea how I was going to pay it. Just when I thought I was going through the worst time of my life, Spencer made sure it really was like that by stirring another trouble. Update number 1. It was a Sunday morning. I was busy reading a newspaper, trying to find a job ad or any means of warming up some money. I heard loud chattering and laughing voices in the living room and got curious about the guest. I went inside from the back garden to take a look when my eyes fell on Spencer standing next to a man whose arm was held by hers as she laughed at something her mother said. My mind was blank watching them as I refused to believe whatever was happening right now in front of me. The girl, however, noticed me as she forced a smile and introduced me to the young man, who seemed to be the next unlucky victim of hers. The man politely greeted me and, seemed unaware of the tension lingering in the air. She informed us that the man was named Nail. It's her boyfriend and, the love of her life. I rolled my eyes at that. I had a hunch about what was coming next, but I decided to stay quiet watching the mother-daughter duo repeat the same routine that they would do whenever she brought out a man. Any of the men had no idea that they were getting themselves into something like this until they would live a few months later with her. Whenever the boy tried to have a conversation with me, they would interrupt and change the topic. I watched them say the same old script that they used with all her other previous boyfriends. From bragging about having money to sugarcoating things to present her daughter in a better light. I waited for them to bring up her past 2 failed marriages, but they acted like it never even happened. I was sure they were deceiving him, and that absolutely boiled my blood. I opened my lips to spill some truth, but my wife cut me off again before dragging me away. Her eyes were hard and devoid of any emotions as she warned me to keep my mouth shut. I was stunned by the way she threatened me, and I could not leave the kitchen and stayed seated on a stool until the man left. Just as he left, I went outside and said I wanted to say something, and that I'm going to tell him the truth. Spencer frowned hearing that as her eyes averted to her mother, and Julia picked up a random decoration piece and chunked it at me. I dodged it, left-right barrel roll, and thankfully did not get injured. However, I was scared for my life now. The woman coldly warned me to stay shut and not involve myself with her daughter's life. I was sure of one thing, and that was I won't participate in whatever plan they were making this time. They both seemed out of their minds, and I knew talking to them won't help anyways, so I decided to think of some other way to knock some sense into them. Update number 2. The wedding preparation started, and I started thinking of ways to pay for all the torture that they put me through. My account was a joint account, so my wife continued to mooch off money from me. They went shopping, and I felt like this was deja vu. They were doing the same things they did for her previous marriage. Julia ignored me and stopped talking to me at all, and I knew there was no way our relationship can go back to what it was. She clearly did not care about me or at all our marriage. I knew it would be better for me to get out of it ASAP. Just as they forced me out of a mortgage on my house before, they again forced me to take out more mortgage to give them money for the 3rd marriage. I was so stressed, my health kept failing. I decided to meet the man she was going to marry to stop this marriage before doing anything else. I knew they would both go paranoid, but it was something I ought to do. So, I called up the guy and asked him to meet me right down at a nearby cafe, making an excuse that I wanted to discuss some wedding-related issues, and he agreed, and I got up, changed my clothes, and exited the house. Julia stopped me to inquire about where I was going, and I lied, telling her that I was going to ask for some money from an old friend, and she immediately let me go without asking any further questions. What a greedy woman. I can't believe I did not realize it sooner. Anyways, I knew that my words might not be enough to persuade the man to not marry Spencer, so I decided to call her ex-husband, begging him to help me out. Fortunately, he agreed and met me halfway at the cafe. I told him about my miserable situation, and he finally took pity on me as he agreed to do whatever I wished. So we both sat down with Nails and informed him about the hellhole he was trying to make himself fall in. Nonetheless, the boy was shocked and could not believe his ears. I was nervous when I went home. I had no clue if Nail was going to cancel the marriage or not. But I got my answer the very next day. Nail came to end his relationship with her, and I felt as if it was a big burden lifted off my chest. But of course, it was nothing like that for two women who were screaming and yelling at each other, blaming them for what happened. I watched as Spencer charged towards her mother and tried to attack her. I pushed her away and threatened to call the police. My own head was spinning, and I knew I was going to faint any moment, so I called my friend and headed over to his house, leaving them alone. It was none of my concern what they do to each other in my absence. I've learned my lesson to stay away from them quite well. Update number 3. So, I knew it was going to be hard for me to get through all that, and telling someone about my miserable situation was even harder. But I needed some support. So, I vented all my hardships and my miserable situation to my friend. He seemed shocked to learn what I was going through, and I told him about my shop getting burnt down and me losing my business, and how they forced me to take out a mortgage on my home. He told me that one of his relatives was an attorney and can help me with all the legal issues and paperwork and whatnot. I could not have been more grateful. After discussing the issue, I went straight home. But another headache was on its way when I saw how disarrayed things were. Everything was at 6s and 7s, as if a hurricane just passed by my house and threw everything upside down. Julia was sitting on the couch sniffling, while Spencer was nowhere to be seen. I felt a little bad for her and tried to walk closer, but she threw a glare in my way, and she stood up and demanded me to go talk to the boy and persuade him to take his words back and marry Spencer. I could not help but laugh at that, and Julia's eyes widened as her face got red with anger. She tried to hit me, but this time, I hit her back, and it shocked her. I knew she considered me a punching bag to let her frustrations out, but I simply could no longer allow her to do so. I pushed her away and warned her to stay away from me and threatened to kick her out if she tried to touch me again. She could not even utter a word and watched me pad towards my room. After entering my room, I called my friend who used to manage my shop and told him that I was going to need some loans to start my business again. But of course, he had no money to give me. I called a lot of my friends, and eventually one of them agreed. I was ecstatic to know that I could finally balance myself on my feet again, and the very next day I contacted another lawyer to get those divorce papers. There was nothing left between Julia and me, so I knew it was better for me to just end it. I saw a drunk Spencer stumbling into the house, and Julia supported her while I watched them from the couch. Just when both were going to enter a room, I spoke. I told them that they need to evacuate my house ASAP, and I was not going to put up with their toxic behavior, not for a second longer. They both went pale, realizing that I was dead serious, and I had no intention of letting them off the hook. Julia rushes towards me, begging me not to kick them out, and I saw how her attitude changed a whole 80 degrees, but this only made me feel worse. I yanked my hand away from her and told her to get lost before I walked away. Maybe, just maybe, this is how things should have ended a long time ago. Update number 4. When I woke up the very next day, I had expected them to be gone, but I was met with the sight of them sitting on the couch with red eyes in the living room. I frowned walking towards them, and they immediately started to cry and ask for forgiveness, but I knew how fake both women were. I didn't wait any longer. I called the cops. They were stunned when a few minutes later they both were getting dragged away by police officers as they were thrown out and warned not to trespass on my property again. Well, I got a loan from my friend that I stated earlier and started renovating my shop. Within a month, I was able to start my business again. I knew it was going to be a hard journey and before I get to the place I used to be. Slowly, I started to earn and get more profit and started saving money to pay the mortgage on my house. I also sent divorce papers to Julia and had gotten a divorce after a few days. I had no idea where both of them went and where they were living anymore, but I knew I was not going to let them get away without making them pay. I filed a case against them for abusing me and forcing me to do things against my will. I hired a good attorney for my case and they easily lost. They were fined and asked to pay back a huge sum to me of all the money, which they had forcefully acquired from me. They were given a few months to pay me back and an account number which was given them to transfer the money so I won't have to even look at their faces again. I continued to work hard for my business. Soon I learned that Spencer got arrested again for fraudulently selling stuff, and to be honest with you guys, I could not care less. And, well, issued them a notice to pay me my money no matter what. Julia was the one who started doing odd jobs to pay me back, while her daughter sat behind bars. She learned how hard life is. All they knew was manipulating people and benefiting from them, and I was just another victim to them. I knew they were going to get away any sooner, as her ex-husband also sued her for fraud. The woman really was just a pathetic being, and I worked hard for a year or so before finally being able to pay the mortgage back and get my house freed. My business was going well, and I decided to open another shop. Just to expand my business, I was again earning well, and I was finally doing better and started my treatment too. I learned it was all because of stress and the tensions they put me through. I had to work hard to get better at it, too, and those women had sucked all my energy dry, and now karma was hitting them back. I could not be happier. Okay, so this was a classic example of karma. It looks like OP was the one that won at the end of this story, but I want to hear from you guys. If you were in OP's position, what would you have done? Would you have done the exact same thing OP did, or would you done it a little different? Guys, go ahead and drop your comments down below in the comment section. Let's discuss this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the content for today. That's going to be all the stories. If you want more daily stories, it's super simple. Just hit that subscribe button right underneath this video and hit the bell notification icon. That way, you're always going to get notified when a new story is up. I hope you guys have a good one, and just remember, it's cool to be kind. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.